Welcome back to a Mucho podcast with Alex Anderson and
Dydine Umunyana.
the podcast where we explore different cultures with people from all over the world. Today, we're talking with Jonathan Kloberdanz about his experiences being around the Syrian refugees and understanding exactly what they have been going through. And also, we're going to briefly discuss his film, Dreams at Sea.
What an amazing interview. It was so inspiring, and I can't wait for each and every one of you to get inspired, especially in this time that we're in. We really need a little bit of inspiration, and I believe that this interview is just going to do that.
Please enjoy the episode, folks.
Enjoy.
Hello.
Hey there. Hey guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining our Mucho podcast family. We're very excited of what you are going to share with us.
Yeah, and it's been a while since we chatted. I think it was 3 years ago I was here.
So Johnny, what an interesting man. I just met you, 2 weeks ago? Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
At a screening of your film, Dreams at Sea. And what a fantastic film that was.
I know. I was in Awi when I left. It's rare to find well-told stories, especially about refugees and refugee camps and post-war. It's not even post-war. In Syria, the war is still going on, and you being able to capture that, to live your luxurious life in America and spend a few years there. How was that? And
well, can you just briefly explain what the film is about?
Right. Well, first of all, people say they see on social media that I'm involved in this film called Dreams at Sea on the Syrian refugee crisis. And everybody assumes that I've been in Syria. They're like, how was Syria? What was that like? And I said, no, I didn't step foot in Syria.
Yeah.
The closest I got was Turkey. But just going back to your question, the whole idea of this film is just, finding a refugee story that encapsulates that journey.
Right.
And there's, 10 million refugees or more. So how do you find that story? And,
right.
I think there's 10 million stories. And so I started in Germany, and that's where I went to a refugee camp.
when was that?
So that was in the beginning of 2016.
Wow.
It was this, where do we begin? And we had an opportunity to go to a refugee camp in Stuttgart. And I walked around there with the executive producer, who's also from Syria. And he was speaking in Arabic with different folks that were wandering around the camp. But to me, it looked like a college campus. And, there's people wearing hijabs everywhere. And I'm thinking, okay, where's the story?
Yeah, right.
So we just started chatting with people, and sure enough, they have stories. And we sit down and interview the first girl who we interviewed. Just told us a story about how her brother died, and because we asked her what's one thing that you brought with you, and she said it's this jacket, and a denim jacket that my brother gave me.
Yeah.
And she said, I just love it because it's the last thing, that I have, and from him, and he died. And she told us, how he died right in her arms, but he was smiling. And I don't know, it was just like, whoa. I started to realize just how serious this thing is. Like, this girl lost her brother, and, I have 3 sisters and a brother, and that really hit me hard. And, just the very beginning of the journey.
Right,
Wow.
right.
And from there, I went to Dubai to follow another story. And then things were just going naturally.
Yes.
And because I did a TED Talk about my project, I was connected with the TED people.
Yeah.
And I met a TED lady there. And she said, if you want to do a story on the Syrian refugee crisis, you have to go to Greece, because that's the crisis is really happening there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know anything about the Syrian war or the conflict? Did you understand what was happening before you took on this project?
That's a good question. I always try to keep my just attention towards world news, and I was always since the war, it was I like to think of it as a revolution, but when I was following it back in 2011, just reading as much as I can about it, just trying to wrap my mind around why is it always the Middle East where these traumas and the conflicts come out of. You know, so I'm constantly trying to figure that out, and I was trying to, you know, learn as much as I could and just reading the news. And then it was around 2015 in the end when I had the opportunity to do this film, and I thought, this is a serious undertaking, you know, and I got nervous about it, but then I thought, okay, now I'm really going to do my research. I started reading more about it, but I could tell you honestly, like, until I went and met Syrian refugees themselves, I don't think I really grasped what it's about,
right?
You know, or the magnitude of the conflict and how
it's affecting all these people and children. And
well, it almost have to be that way. I mean, it's kind of hard to understand what's going on unless you have a firsthand experience of seeing. Like, you know, in this case, I guess seeing is truly believing and understanding what is happening with these people.
At the same time, like, a lot of refugees, like, they also have the same feeling that I had, you know, back in 2011. Like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
And why is this happening to us?
The question, like,
you never know. I remember my mom telling me that my dad's mom had a feeling that something may happen in Rwanda, genocide, but they didn't really know that it was going to happen. You know, like, they still were just hoping for something else, and just hit us in the, you know, in before everyone knew it. But most of the time, when you're going through those things, you don't really know there's a world out there, the other people that are living in you don't even think about them. You're just you know, struggling, and I understand what you're going through.
I mean, you fled. Well, you survived.
I did. I survived. I was a little. I wasn't able to, like, run. I just was lucky. But the living in refugee camps, it's, you know, like, you don't really have control over your life. That's something I got from the movie, like, seeing how hopeful they are and using their art, all those, and just sticking together.
Yeah, that's one thing that that's what I try to translate to people about life in the camp, because a lot of people back home say, oh, that must have been dangerous, or, you know, I don't know, you have a lot of courage to do that. And I try to translate them the fact that refugees, you know, like, living in Syria, as things were cracking down on them over time, you know, like, life in Syria started to get really sad, and it was scary. They couldn't really, you know, they couldn't congregate in one place, like, to have a dinner party, for example. You don't make too much noise, you know. And so life just became more and more depressing, and so living in the camp was like freedom.
We're alive.
And there's multicultural experiences. People would sit around the fire and, I don't know, share stories, sing songs, and they felt free, even though they were totally questioning their future every day. And they thought that me as a journalist coming from the States had some kind of answer for them, and I just didn't.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that at the Q&A after the screening. Did you feel, and I guess you just answered the question, but, like, did you feel like people were looking to you, like, every time they saw this guy, like, oh, he's from America, maybe he'll, you know, he has strings that he can pull to get us to where we need to be or where we want to be. Yeah, like, did you ever feel that, did you ever feel that way, I guess?
And did you feel guilty that you can't really give them everything they need? Like, did you have that? How did you survive like this? You know,
the truth is, I didn't have any of those things. Like, although, you know, I did have, like, a little bit of resources that I could, like, the first day I got to the camp, I met a bunch of interesting, beautiful, lovely families, and I identified, you know, that night I started to think about, what can I do for that family, like a little gift. And then I went back and I gave shoes to one family, and then I found out, like, a week later, he never wore the shoes. He sold them, you know. But whatever, it's like, you know, if you got,
it helped.
You can do what you want with the gift that you're given. Yeah. But it was about the information and giving them information. Yeah, I think they thought that I had answers for them, and I was really just figuring it out day by day too. And but I did tell them, and I reinforced the fact that the borders are not opening at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And because they kept having this hope that the borders were going to open, and that still hasn't happened. There's been no opening of the borders since, and I arrived there right when the borders were shut down. So it was Germany accepted 1 million refugees, and finally they kept coming and coming, and Germany said, we can't handle anymore.
Right.
So when they stopped accepting them and said, that's it, then all the other refugees that were stuck in different countries, whether your uncle or mother was like in Germany, you were stuck in maybe Serbia or Bosnia or Greece or Turkey.
Oh, wow. Yeah. During your journey there, how many countries did you go to? How many cultures were you exposed to? And what was the impact you had from those experiences?
Yeah, or vice versa. Like, how did that affect you, visiting so many different cultures, different people?
Well, it's interesting. When I first went to Germany, I was doing another project, and I just noticed that it was the first time I was in Germany, so I was really excited to see, like, this is where I come from. This is my ancestors.
Yeah.
And when I got there, everywhere in Munich were refugees with hijabs on. And I just remember thinking to myself, what in the heck is going on here? And then I looked in the news, it's the refugees, and they're coming to Germany, and this is strange. I didn't think Germany would look like this.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say there was a little, a bit of coldness in my heart that totally warmed up over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, pretty soon after that, after I started to realize, that these folks are fleeing the war. So from Germany, I saw these refugees come in, and then when I went to Greece, I had never been to Greece. And so I was always curious about it. And I got to see Greece in a way that I think so many people would never imagine it, because during the day I would be in a refugee camp with people from Afghanistan, Iraq, different parts of Africa who had fled through Libya, and folks from Iran or Pakistan, all in this one place. And I thought that it was only going to be Syrian refugees, and then I realized
it's a universal thing. Wow.
Yeah. And so in the day I would be in the Middle East in a camp, and then in the night I would go back to Greece. I was still in Greece, but that's how it felt like for me. And it just blew my mind, because a lot of people go to Greece for vacation. And a lot of Greek people, of course, they're suffering from the economic collapse. But in Thessaloniki in the north, everybody just sort of sits around all day at coffee shops, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, having beer. I mean, the coffee shops and everything, they're just packed with people. So that's what I noticed. And I noticed that there were a lot of, people coming for vacation, but not that many people seem to know or care, even locals like in Thessaloniki, that this camp is 1 hour away from them.
So did it seem like they were relatively unaffected by this influx of people?
On the islands, which are right next to Turkey, it's right now the biggest conflict is probably since, the borders closed. Yeah. Because, Turkey said, we're not going to try to stop refugees from going to Greece anymore. But generally, they want a better life for themselves, and Turkey's pretty rough. It's a very low income potential, especially if you're a refugee. Yeah. So being in Greece after so many years of refugees arriving on these small islands, those locals on the islands are now uprising, and they're saying, that's enough.
Yeah.
You can't come to our island anymore.
Oh my God.
It's getting violent.
Yeah, I'd imagine, right?
Buildings, NGO buildings are getting burned down. This is just since, actually, the day the screening happened in Hollywood.
That same night.
Around that time.
Yeah.
There were boats arriving. There's boats arriving every day.
Yeah.
But, instead of one boat, two boats, every day it was like dozens of boats.
How long has the Syrian wars been going on?
It started in 2011.
It's...
9 years.
9 years.
Almost a decade.
Were you able to understand the cause of the conflict, or even talking to the local people that are from Syria who went through it? Were you able to know at least some information that maybe one day will end, the war will end, and Syria will have peace? Or
Oh, it's just such a combination of factors, and some things that people don't even think about. Like there was a massive drought in Syria for like 2 or 3 years leading up to 2011.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which really was a stress on the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and on top of all of that, you know, there's the Arab Spring, you know, these uprisings and these revolutions where the people are unhappy with their leader, and
Yeah.
Assad being sort of in this family dictatorship position. He said, "Oh, you want to have an uprising here and turn, you know, and take over through a revolution?" He said, "No," and he started killing people and during peaceful protests. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when these people, there were these kids, you know, they did some spray paint, which was, you know, against the regime. They called, you know, Assad's regime.
Right.
And they just did some spray paint, and those kids were killed. And when that happened, like, you know, it just takes one thing for like the Syrian people to go crazy.
Yeah.
They were so upset.
Right.
You know?
Right.
They thought, no, how can this happen to us? And then it got worse and worse as the Syrians in the country said, we're going to fight, you know, and then they formed the Free Syrian Army. And now throw into all of the mix here, what was happening in Iraq, and, you know, this long, like, constant struggle, and, like, with the uprising of ISIL, these guys, all of these terrorist organizations, like, took the opportunity to descend on Syria, and then, you know,
Because it was fragile.
yeah, fragile, and they could take advantage of the situation. So civilians got caught in it, you know. And now, many years later, you know, Russia got involved, and you know, like a lot of people have interest in the Middle East, and most of those reasons I would have to say are for, I mean, there's racism, one issue, and then there's also like power and money grabbing. It's about oil.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
about- yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always been, right? I mean, that's
So
core of the conflicts since
before we were born.
before we were born. Let's say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. The world is a mess, you know? Yeah. So how was your daily, so you were with the camp. I know that you traveled a lot with that family, with the Ali's family. How did you feel safe? I think we asked that question earlier, but did you feel safe traveling with them? And there was smuggling involved. You know, it was a lot. You know, it was like you were on a journey with them. You kind of were. I mean, you were a journalist, but you kind of were stuck in the journey they were going through for 2 years.
Yeah, it was about 2 years, yeah, or maybe a little less. But you know, there were moments in the shooting of the film where people thought that I was a Syrian refugee. Well, I would just, you know, for example, I was walking down the street. Ali, you know, one of the main characters in the movie, he wanted to Skype with his girlfriend, and the girls wanted to go out and go for a walk on the street, and with the mother. But there's, in their culture, they don't walk around 3 girls and the mother on the street without a man. You know?
Right.
So Ali said, "Johnny, you go. You're basically part of the family now." And so I started walking around, and then, you know, I started seeing what it feels like when you get dirty looks on the streets of Greece, and people think that you're a refugee. Now, that's not danger, but there was other danger that came about when, like, police saw me filming, and they didn't want it to be filmed. Luckily, I was able to somehow, like, befriend them. You know, I say, "I'm from America," and they, "Oh, Hollywood." They would start talking about movies that they like.
Yeah.
I would joke around with them. Like, I actually made friends with, like, I don't know, there was like 20 police officers who at first started looking at me up and down, and, like, you know, they were angry that I was filming. And I made friends with all of them in that moment. And then the captain came over, and he was like, "What's going on here? You know, you guys, like, you can't be nice to this guy. You know, he's a journalist." And
Wow.
Really? There's animosity there.
Oh yeah, especially when those type of things are happening. I think, you know, the journalists don't really have that big of, you don't have that big space of sharing whatever you want to share. You have to make sure it's not going to affect the country itself, and so.
What's the general attitude towards Americans there? Like, is it
in Greece?
Yeah.
I mean, Americans come to Greece. Usually they go to the islands, and they spend money. And so, and Greece is a big hot spot for tourism. So I know a lot of Greek people haven't even been to the United States.
Yeah.
So I think so many people around the world, they just have this idea in their mind of what is the United States, and a lot of them don't have the time and the resources to even come. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I think they're generally great. There's a lot of, I don't know, I had some bad experiences with like Greek people who were mad about the refugee situation, and they saw me as somebody who supported refugees. And they probably thought that I was like, open borders, and we should just open the borders for them. And
Maybe it's like CIA or something like that.
what's that, CIA?
Or so they thought you were like, part of the American government.
The
No
cameras
kidding.
walking around, and I mean, in full support of that, though. I can just picture that.
How many countries have you been in the last few years? Like, how many countries?
Well, I just counted my whole life. I've been about 46 countries, but in the last 5 years, I would say 20.
20.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, and you grew up in Colorado.
Yeah.
Like, how was your community growing up?
Yeah.
Like, for you to become the person you are right now, like going everywhere, 40 something countries in the world.
Did you ever think that this was gonna be your life?
No, but I remember when I was a kid, like we went to Florida, then we went to California, and when I was just in a new place, I just felt like really excited and happy,
Right.
But back home, like it was like half Hispanic, half white community, and there wasn't much mixing, unfortunately. Like I didn't learn Spanish in all those years.
Yeah.
I'm working on it now, but I had the opportunity, like through my church, to go to Juarez, Mexico, when I was 13.
Yeah.
And I mean, back then Juarez was really dangerous.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were nuts to send like this group of kids,
American kids to.
And your parents said yes.
Yeah, they said yes.
Yeah, go for it.
I was playing soccer on the street. Like the church kids were like painting a house, like you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I just was like playing soccer with kids in the street, and like I bought beer for some kids. They said, you can buy beer, like they'll let you buy the beer. And I bought them a beer, they gave me the money, the pesos, and I bought them a beer. So I was like immediately connecting from that age with kids from another culture. And, this is in the barrio, this is in the ghetto.
Yeah, you really never felt like an outsider or make other people feel like outsiders. I remember when we met in Rwanda, it didn't feel like we had a whole, that was fun. It was a long day, but there was like a connection, all of us, that you just, sorry. But it was almost like we all have known each other. It's like, it wasn't like, you're like, you were, a strange man from a strange land. No, or we are strange people from, this country that you've never been before. So you kind of have that sense in you. And what do you think people who don't have it? Some people just are stuck in one bubble of a culture, and they think that's enough. They don't know anything outside of their race. Or what do you think they're missing out?
I can just tell you through my own experience, like I was fortunate to go study abroad in New Zealand for 1 semester.
Yeah.
And that was my very first time, in another country, living on my own at like 20 years old. And I would go on a lot of hiking trips. I had my local friends from Colorado, but on these hiking trips, I just started to, meet people from around the world, like, oh, where are you from? Japan? What's Japan like? And I had my camera, so the camera gave me the connection, I said, maybe I can use the camera and interview this person about where they're from, and through that, it was just my excuse, basically, to become more outgoing.
And to get to know that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you have the camera, like right now, you got the podcast, and it's
I know.
we're having a different dialogue because you're in the you're asking the questions.
Oh, yes.
And you can keep
That's
asking
true.
questions. I could try to flip it on you as a documentary filmmaker. I want to. I'm so curious about,
But you're not going to get, don't do it.
Yeah, you can come on my podcast. This is your podcast.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gave you the tools to get to learn about all these cultures. Yeah, how do you feel about humanity? What's your feelings about, about us all?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think people forget that we're floating in space on a rock that happens to have like everything we need, and that, you know, we could just enjoy this life, but you know, we're making it so complex on each other, you know, and we're here for a reason, you know. I think, I mean, if you think of spiritual reason, like, I don't know, I think of the human body like it just replaces itself every 7 years, every single thing of it. So what are you and me?
Yeah.
Like, you are not even your mind, like you're constantly changing, and
Right.
you know, so we're here to like stay curious about the world and the universe, you know, and look up at the stars and not forget that, you know, because we get like behind our screens and, you know, and then we're easily persuaded. You know, we have to realize that we're kind of like a different kind of monkey that is has a lot of issues, you know, with our senses, that we're overusing our eyeballs. Actually, that's why I love podcasts, because like you just close your eyes and listen to a podcast.
Right.
I know.
And absorb so much information.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I'm fascinated by space, and I don't remember who I was having a conversation with about this, but like you said, we don't spend enough time like just looking up in the stars and just imagining. And we are on this tiny, tiny rock in the middle of this black void. Like, we're so small in comparison with billions of other things in the universe. And when you keep that sort of thing in perspective, not to like devalue humanity at all, but we're not, you know, we don't need to be as consumed with every little thing and complicate every little thing that we tend to do, especially with, you know, this age of smartphones and having screens in front of you all the time. It's like, just take a step back. It's like what you're talking about, like being on the edge. Just take a step back, breathe, and sort of reevaluate what you value and what you're here to do.
That brings up just this idea in my mind about, like, you know, the joy of giving, you know, like when you have the opportunity. For me, I don't know, I just recently had this epiphany that, like, for me, it's like, maybe the reason I'm here is just to, like, you know, listen to people and, you know, to transmit their stories, and that sometimes that's just enough, you know, to boost somebody's morale. Like, if in a refugee camp, so many of every single person I would say that I met in that refugee camp, like, they'll send me these, you know, in the Middle East, they have these, like, it's funny way that they communicate, but they'll send, like, a big, like, an old guy with a beard, you know, who's, like, 70 years old, will send me text messages with just, like, hearts and flowers and, like, golden tinsel, you know, and every time there's, you know, some kind of...
It's like, I'm here, I'm thinking about you.
Yeah.
That's enough, literally.
Yeah. And, like, some of these folks, like, I wasn't, they gave me more than I gave them. Literally.
You probably give them more than you think.
Well, that's intangible. I mean, they would serve me tea. They would always have such generosity. That's something that blew my mind with, like, the Syrian culture. They always were trying to feed me.
But you give them also something. I feel like with filmmaking, with the platform you use, documenting all these stories, you give them something that probably they don't receive all the time, a place to share. As a documentarian, you're asking questions, you're listening, and they felt that you were feeling what they're going through, and they don't get that chance all the time. So I feel like when you're using, you know, your camera, you're also still helping them heal in a way, like being able to release what's inside they've probably never been able to even talk about to anyone. But having that person who's outside of the story they're going through, to for them to share it to that person, they are letting you know they're sharing, but also they are, you know, it's helpful. So that's why probably they were giving you so much, because, you know, they felt close to you.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. But, you know, a lot of times we couldn't even communicate. I mean, the traditional way.
True.
So we were just sitting there, and, like, you know, they would show me photos on their phone, and sometimes they would say Syria, Syria, and they would draw it on the ground, you know. This is Latakia, and they would point to their home village, you know. Latakia, oh wow, good, Latakia, you know. I don't know, it was just amazing communicating like that.
Yeah,
you know,
and you still get the message.
Yeah, I would show them, this is my family. Oh, family, beautiful. Oh, so beautiful. Just like, it taught me something that just, like, language is so many other ways you can communicate.
Right. Yeah. And I think we were talking with Arno about, I think he said something about like language being almost like a barrier, because he didn't speak the same language as someone he was interacting with. But like you're saying, you can interact in such a potentially deeper way. You know, if you don't have a language, you don't have words to communicate with. You know, he shows you a picture, he gives you something, you give him something. It's like, I think it's a little bit more intimate in certain ways.
There was one time, actually, I have two things I definitely was thinking about this morning that I wanted to share, like about gifting. And the first one is, I'm sitting with the family in their living room. They all lived in that little living room for a few months. And I said, oh, remember with Sam that you said that you still have the keys to your house in Syria? And then she goes, oh yeah, and she started speaking Arabic to her mother, and her mother went and got the keys. And I was like, oh wow, this was a big thing. Like a lot of Syrians, they would leave their home, and they would only take a few things, but like the key was very significant.
Yeah.
They still have the key, but they don't have the home.
Wow.
And they said, this was our uncle's house, this was our grandma's house, and this was our house, and this was they had like 5 houses on one keychain.
Yeah.
And then the mother she
Hand
said,
it to you.
She said, it's yours. I said, no.
Wow.
It's not for me.
Because you can go there, but they can't.
But even, it's
the door doesn't even exist. The whole place is just shattered. It's just a symbol.
the symbol. Yeah.
It was a symbol of how much they appreciated me, how much they loved me, and she called me son. And I saw her. She cried in that moment because she needed to give up the symbol of the fact that she would ever go back to those homes. And now I carry those keys with me all the time, and I have a plan. I want to go back and give them the keys back. At some point, I'm going to make a copy of the keys and say, I have a copy of myself, but I want to give you these back, and just to know that some things do return.
Wow.
And another thing, like one time I was in the camp and some guy just walked up to me, and I took my hat off, and I like to do this, I don't know why, but I always give my hats away, some kind of a fedora brimmed hat, straw hat. I put the hat on him, I said, you look good, and I kind of patted him on the back, and he was like, oh, wait. And then he goes into his tent, and he comes out and he gives me these like prayer beads. But these prayer beads come from Iraq. He carried them with him for I don't know how long. This is a straw hat for a prayer beads? Like, no, it's too much. It's too much. He goes, oh, my friend, keep it.
Yeah.
But it means something. It means a lot. And that act of kindness that you're showing them, it perceived like tenfold for you, like, giving these very precious things. But like kindness will do wonders. Yeah. Like universally.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does change. Yeah. It does change the world. Little things. Yeah. Every day.
It does.
Inexpensive.
Yeah. It's
free 99.
It's so free. It's very free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. I'm like
moved right now.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know what to say.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, I often think about their home, and like somebody was, one of their relatives back there with an iPhone and walked through there, and it's just a bombed out shell now.
Wow.
Johnny, so this podcast is about cultures and how we are from different worlds, different lands, and we speak different languages, and maybe the color skin tone is different, the eyes, the heights of humans on this little rock that we are all on, but still sharing the same sun, sharing the same sky, but we tend to forget that we are all the same. And for you, someone who's been in all these countries and experiencing humans, different hearts and different souls, what do you think? Are we more connected than we think, or are we definitely different and not even connected at all?
I think that we are way more connected than we truly, we have technology to connect us, but I think we don't even need the technology, and we forgot about that. Like, I don't know, I just have this belief that, sometimes, you think about someone and then all of a sudden they text you, so it's like, wow, they got the text before I even sent them the text, we are connected. And I think of humanity, like, how many billion, 7 billion people on the planet. Let's just say, for example, like that they're just one human body. We as human beings are one organism. So, here we are in California, and, maybe you got friends that are like really doing well financially out here, but why do these people feel sometimes like the need to abuse themselves, like through, pharmaceuticals or alcohol dependency and all these different ways that we get stressed out, about little things. And my belief is that like if the 7 billion people represented by one body, then we're living with a foot that's dying of gangrene, and like that, we're wearing like diamonds on our rings, but we can only see out of one eye, and like we have like, a mental deficit, and we have like there's parts of us that are really hurting, and we can't pretend that we're not connected to those, refugees who are struggling, and they feel the pain and they send a message out, but and we get it, but we just don't interpret it in the right way, and some people do. They get the message and they're aware of it, and then they see, okay, when I take care of my brother and my sister who's suffering, then I improve the whole well-being of this one body,
Right.
I want to do like an art project. I'm looking for an artist to like do a portrait of humanity as one being.
As one being, that would be amazing.
And as you're talking, I'm trying to like conceptualize. I'm trying to like put an image in my head. That's such a profound idea, and very true. Because we do get these messages. It's not like we don't hear them, especially in America. Like it's hard to not hear about things like this. It's just like what's the thing in the middle that kind of influences us to make a decision to help, or to not, or to do whatever we can.
I think it's not individualized enough. So like when it becomes them and us, you don't realize at some point that same terror that hit their home can be knocking at your door as well.
Yeah.
So just, thinking it in that way, that's happening to that family. Like the way you said earlier about how you saw the first interview you had, she lost her brother, and the first thing you thought about was your brother. So you kind of, you felt her pain, and you didn't see it, it's just her and her brother. You didn't take it that way. But in that moment, you realize it's something that can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
They didn't choose to be born in Syria. They just happened to find themselves there. And
Right.
And then whatever the history, the history of Syria, they were trapped there. You didn't choose to be born here.
Yeah.
I didn't choose to be born in Rwanda.
Yeah.
But that's how we found ourselves here. So why not, take that moment to feel other people's stories, because it could be my story at some point, or my grandparents' story, So I feel like the work you're doing and bringing those stories to life, it will definitely, change. I hope it changes people's minds.
Yeah, I definitely hope that. What's happening in Greece is really interesting. Because if you look back to World War II, there were Jews who fled Greece and found refuge in Syria. Mm-hmm. So it goes back and forth like that all the time, and we're always changing, coming in and out of these situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I hope this film is definitely a tool for building empathy for,
Helping
girls who
each
wear
other.
hijabs and happen to be Muslim, and
Right.
we can all live in harmony together,
I know.
We don't have so much judgment about each other, like
know.
just by the first thing we see. We're so deep. There's so much to every person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And like you said, we're super alike.
We are.
Like outside of skin tone, height.
The hijab.
Yeah, but like very small things that make us slightly different.
And then people just tend to hold on to those more than what makes us the same. What's your message to everyone who will be listening to this podcast? What would you tell them briefly?
Well, I would say that, when you see the amount of love that one family has for each other, then you appreciate your own family's love. And you want to also think about people who don't really have a family, and think about like the homeless people who, the reason why they're not doing so well is probably because they have a problem communicating or connecting with people. So I would just say, like, through the project, like, I hope that people will try to connect with people that you generally wouldn't for some reason or another, and just push yourself a little bit and stretch those muscles and see what happens, see what comes of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful message. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm very happy that you agreed to come on and talk about
that was
your
very
journey.
nice of you.
It was,
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
You're a very smart man.
You're very.
I think I learned quite a lot. I learned a lot through the film, through the Q&A, through the research that I did beforehand, and then just talking to you now. Like, you have seen much of the world, more than a lot of people have the opportunity to, and the way that you articulate your experiences is, I think it's very helpful. Like, for one, and you definitely paint a picture of positivity and hope that I think a lot of people need to hear.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, what you guys are doing here is really important too, and getting out that message and getting people to speak from their heart.
I know.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
This was beautiful.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening, folks. I hope you learned as much as we did talking to Johnny. And if you want to support the refugees, specifically in Greece, you can go and look up the Chios Eastern Shore Response Team. It's a great charity that helps out thousands of young refugees better their lives in any way possible.
Yeah. Your donation would be very helpful, especially in this time. Like, they need water, soap to wash their hands. I think this is gonna hit them even way more than here in the United States. So anything you can do to support, you can find the link of this website, cesrt.org, on our website, umunyapodcast.com. You can find this link and support them. You can follow us on social media. We will share all this information on our social media as well. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. You can comment on any of the posts that we post on our social media so that we can get back to you,
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, folks, please tune in for next week's episode. We're going to be talking to a good friend of Dydine's.
This one is going to be, you definitely need this one episode. You need it this time. You need inspiration. You need hope. Oh man, this one was real.
Yeah. Definitely.
We're not going to tell you who. We're going to keep that as a surprise, but stay tuned.
Stay tuned.